What Constitution? Are y'all ready for this? As I sit here and take in all of the news from every direction, all I see is deceivers, liars, corporate media, cover-ups, agenda, all pushing the same propaganda. It's time for a game changer, a visionary, an innovative person who changes the way that people think of the situations. It's time for Game Changer TV, telling it like it is. Get in the game. Thank you for tuning in to Game Changer TV. I'm your host, Terri Lynn, and this is the channel where every day we're telling it like it is. Today is May 5th, 2025, and it's early in the morning again, but I had to get this video out. What Constitution? Y'all strap in for this. From yesterday, Trump uncertain about upholding the Constitution. I don't know. From the Washington Post yesterday, Trump says, I don't know, when asked if he is required to uphold the Constitution. This is from yesterday. Trump, in a new interview, says he doesn't know if he backs due process rights. What is due process rights? Due process rights are fundamental protections guaranteed by the United States Constitution that ensure fairness and prevent arbitrary government action. They encompass both procedural and substantive rights, ensuring that individuals are treated fairly and have a chance to defend their interests when the government seeks to take away their life, liberty, or property. And Trump says he doesn't know if he backs due process rights that protects citizens to be treated fairly and have a chance to defend themselves when the government seeks to take away their life, liberty, or property. Procedural due process. Notice an opportunity to be heard. When the government acts in a way that could harm an individual's rights, they must provide notice of the action and a chance to respond. You think Trump would, if he was on the up and up, who just said he was falsely accused and made a whipping post in all of his trials. And you see, due process guarantees people a fair trial. You would think if he was an honest person, he would want other people to have a fair trial, since he said he didn't get it. He backed his own due process rights when he was before courts, but now he says he doesn't know if he agrees to protect the Constitution to give other people their due process rights. What Constitution? But let's flash back to when he was sworn in January 20th, 2025.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
And he took the oath without putting his hand on the Bible. Yet, in 2016, he put his hand on the Bible to protect the Constitution. It was picked up by a lot of different news organizations. Trump doesn't place his hand on Bible during swearing in. And people were saying it wasn't that big of a deal that he didn't.
When U.S. President Donald Trump took his oath of office, he had his right hand raised, but his left wasn't on the Bible. But does it matter? Academics tell Reuters that it was an oversight and it doesn't have much practical impact, although the moment has gone viral online. One professor at the University of Texas told us that a president doesn't have to connect to God in this way. The oath is to the Constitution. 2 Bibles were held by Trump's wife, Melania, as she stood next to him at the ceremony.
So that clip says that he didn't have to put his hand on the Bible, that he does not have to connect to a God in this way. The oath is to the Constitution. And what is the presidential's oath of office? The presidential oath of office is a sworn statement recited by the President of the United States before entering office, which requires them to faithfully execute their duties and preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. The oath is required by the Constitution and has remained the same since George Washington's swearing in 1789. Here is the full text of the oath. I, Donald J. Trump, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So y'all keep that in mind, because this is going to come in later, that the oath is to the Constitution. But he didn't put his hand on the Bible. But wait till we get this going. So they made an excuse. He didn't have to put his hand on the Bible because it's not a vow to God, but it's an oath to the Constitution. We read what the oath stated. And yesterday, NPR, does a president need to uphold the Constitution? Trump says, I don't know. So he didn't take a vow to God or the Constitution? May 4th, 2025. Trump asked if he has to uphold the Constitution. He says, I don't know. Trump said on NBC's News Meet the Press that he's following lawyers' advice as he tries to execute rapid deportations, arguing that giving immigrants due process is time-consuming. Trump's idea to incarcerate U.S. citizens abroad raises serious constitutional concerns, scholars say. This is lawlessness. Lawlessness, a state of disorder due to a disregard of the law. 2 Thessalonians 2:3-4 says that the day of the Lord won't come until the man of lawlessness is revealed. 2 Thessalonians 2:3-4 warns against deception, stating that the day of the Lord will not come until a rebellion occurs first and the man of lawlessness is revealed, or the Antichrist. Key points in supporting this interpretation. Some interpretations, like those found in Fazazio, state that the man of lawlessness is explicitly the Antichrist who will come on the world stage. The man of lawlessness opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God, which is similar description to the Antichrist. Paul states that the Lord Jesus will destroy the man of lawlessness with the breath of his mouth. So the day of the Lord cannot come until the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man who has no regard for the law. Trump backs blatantly unconstitutional proposal to send United States citizen inmates to El Salvador prisons. One legal expert said, you may not deport a U.S. citizen, period. But he has a history of lawlessness. What Constitution? Nikki Haley said March 1st, 2024, I don't know if Trump would follow the Constitution in a second term. December 1st, 2023, Trump legal news brief, appeals court rules that Trump can be sued for citing January 6th violence. In that article, it says, in a filing made to the Colorado Supreme Court, lawyers for former President Donald Trump say that he never took an oath to support the Constitution of the United States and should therefore not be banned from the state's presidential ballots in 2024 based on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. So what did he do? Put his hand behind his back and cross his fingers? But his lawyers said that he did not take an oath to support the Constitution. So what did he do then? Because taking the oath is an oath to the Constitution. So what did he do? Swear by his own name? December 3rd, 2022, Trump calls for termination of the United States Constitution after Elon Musk Hunter Biden drop. Elon Musk reacts to Trump's call for termination of parts of the Constitution. Trump calls for termination of the Constitution in Truth Social post. Trump suggests termination of Constitution over election laws. Y'all, I got the hiccups. I'm sorry. So Donald Trump, the real Donald Trump, wrote, so with the revelation of a massive and widespread fraud and deception in working closely with big tech companies, the DNC and the Democrat Party, do you throw the presidential election results of 2020 out and declare the rightful winner? Or do you have a new election? A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Our great founders did not want and would not condone false and fraudulent elections. They would not support overthrowing the Constitution. July 18, 2024, expert says big chunk of Project 2025 could become policy during Trump's second presidency. Concerns about Project 2025 center around its apparent endorsement of a controversial and untested theory, the so-called unitary executive theory, a Reagan-era view of executive power that looks to give the president greater control over the federal bureaucracy. The implications of putting such a theory in practice would be contrary to what the framers of the Constitution had in mind. Project 2025 is a blueprint for canceling American democracy, and Trump's got the author of Project 2025 working in his administration. What if there was a blueprint for a future presidential administration to unilaterally lay waste to our constitutional order and turn America from a democracy into autocracy in one fell swoop? November 27, 2024. How Trump has changed and will change the Constitution. And y'all, the elimination of the Constitution and sovereign nations is a global goal. A match light is being lit to the Constitution and our rights. October 7th, 2023, the global Constitution. In a world beset by rising nationalism and chronic disregard for global responsibility, could a world constitution steer us towards peace and prosperity? World Constitution. A world constitution is a proposed framework or document aimed at establishing a system of global governance. It seeks to provide a set of principles, structures, and laws to govern the relationships between states and address global issues. The concept of a world constitution reflects the aspiration for greater international cooperation, peace, and the resolution of global challenges. And y'all, we know it's coming because Revelation talks about the 10 kings, the 10 regions of the earth. The earth is going to be divided up into 10 regions, and they're going to give their power and authority to the beast. We're moving towards this. The case for a global constitution. Will there be a universal constitution for a digital future? While a truly universal, legally binding constitution for the digital future in the vein of national constitutions is unlikely, efforts are underway to establish shared principles and frameworks for digital governance. Digital Bill of Rights. Some argue for a digital Bill of Rights similar to the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution to protect online rights and privacy. This would establish a baseline of shared principles and values for the digital world, potentially serving as a foundation for more specific laws and regulations. Now, it was from UN Aligned who wrote the article about the global constitution and why we need it. It says, putting humanity before nationality and planet before greed. UN Aligned is a non-government organization based in Finland that works towards the creation of a better United Nations. The Business of International Settlements says that the CBDC or digital currency rollout may require changing the Constitution. We're moving towards the New World Order. Understand what time it is in America. Our lives are closer to Russia under Stalin, Cuba under Castro, China under Mao, and Venezuela under Maduro than we are to the Constitution. What if the Constitution no longer applied? Loyalty to Trump or the Constitution, an inevitable clash? Inevitable, certain to happen. Are you going to be loyal to the Constitution or Trump? Because you're not going to be able to do both, and the clash is inevitable. It will be unavoidable, and it will happen. Ron Paul says President Trump's foreign policy reminds me of all the promises of George H.W. Bush. It is not exactly a message of peace and constitution.
One of the things we're going to be talking about is the foreign policy of Trump, and it's not exactly a message of peace and constitution, but it reminded me of all the promises of George H.W. One of the things we're going to be talking about is the foreign policy of Trump, and it's not exactly a message of peace and constitution, but it reminded me of all the promises of George H.W. Because I remember he was very promising that we were not to be the policemen of the world and all that other stuff. What did we end up with?
Humble foreign policy is what he promised.
What we want to talk a little bit about is targeting Iran, know, whether it's through Yemen or directly with Iran and this sort of thing. But he's literally using dangerous talk.
It is.
One article here on anti-war. Trump threatens Iran with bombing if nuclear deal is not reached. I wonder if it's on whose terms? His turn.
Maybe he's bluffing. The problem with bluffing all the time is that people never know when you're telling the truth. Is he doing it? Is he not doing it? Is he going to bomb us? Is he not going to bomb us? And the danger, maybe you can do that in a real estate deal. Oh, that bathroom is totally fine. Trust me. The toilet works fine. But when you are dealing in world affairs, the Iranians, if they don't think he's bluffing, they may do something based on what they perceive, rightly, it sounds, at least to me, as a threat to be bombed. They may react in a way that would take us down the road to war, which is unnecessary. That's the problem with bluffing in foreign affairs, and I think, President Trump ran as a peace candidate. I will stop the wars. I will get us out of wars. And in fact, I think he appealed to a large portion of Libertarian Party people, and libertarians in the party itself endorsed him for president on the basis of him being a pro-peace and pro-prosperity president. Well, leaning into war like he's doing is, as you said, anti-peace and anti-prosperity. Well, let's take a look at, we're buried in the lead a little bit here. Let's take a look at what we're talking about. And this is from Axios. Anti-War did a good write-up about it. I think Politico did a good job as well. But here's the Axios piece. Trump threatens Iran with bombs unless nuclear deal reached. Go to the next one. Here's his quote. Over the weekend, apparently he called an NBC News anchor and said he was mad about a few things. He used the word P-I blank blank E-D. Maybe it happened. He didn't deny it. Here we go. President Trump threatened to bomb Iran if the Islamic Republic doesn't reach a new deal with the U.S. on its nuclear program. As you point out, Dr. Paul, they had a deal with the United States, and Trump canceled it. So what kind of a new deal would it be, A? And B, why would they trust Trump if he canceled the deal in the first place? And they say why it matters. Trump wants to engage in diplomatic talks with Iran, has leveled threats against it before, but this is the strongest and most serious. Here's what he said, quote, if they don't make a deal, there will be bombing. It will be bombing the likes of which they have never seen before, Trump told NBC News' Kristen Welker during a phone interview. Bombing like they've never seen before, and he gave him a 2-month deadline. Let's get a deal by 2 months or we're going to bomb you.
Yeah, I don't think he should get a very good grade on diplomacy.
Again, people are saying that this is Netanyahu's dream to get the U.S. to fight its war against Iran. He did it against Iraq. If you remember, he went into Congress in 2002 and said, believe me, if you attack Iraq, there's got to be peace in the Middle East, right? How did that work out? Yeah. And they're doing the same thing with Iran.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is frustrated, and she unleashes a laundry list of complaints against the Trump administration. And she was one of Trump's biggest supporters. Frustrated Marjorie Taylor Greene unleashes laundry list of complaints against Trump administration. Outspoken Georgia Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has sounded off against the Trump administration in a lengthy tirade on social media site X. She said, I represent the base, and when I'm frustrated and upset over the direction of things, you better be clear. The base is not happy, wrote Greene. The Post fired shots at the recent minerals deal with Ukraine, the handling of the war in Iraq, COVID-19 vaccines, and election integrity, saying Trump's administration has so far failed to address concerns that frustrate the base. I campaigned for no more foreign wars, and now we're supposedly on the verge of going to war with Iran, she said. I don't think we should be bombing foreign countries on behalf of other foreign countries, especially when they have their own nuclear weapons and massive military strength. While Greene resisted criticizing Trump directly, it is yet another step in the increasing distance she seems to be placing between herself and the rest of the Republican Party. This is from 12 hours ago. The House will vote on Monday H.R. 867, the I-Go Anti-Boycott Act, sponsored by Representative Mike Lawler, fines up to $1 million, prison sentences for up to 20 years for Americans participating in boycotts of Israel or its settlements if these boycotts are endorsed by international bodies like the UN or the EU. What did Marjorie Taylor Greene say? Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, I will be voting no. It is my job to defend Americans' rights to buy or boycott whomever they choose without the government harshly fining them or imprisoning them. But what I don't understand is why are we voting on a bill on behalf of other countries and not the president's executive orders that are for our country? Threaten people that boycott, wanting to throw them in jail. Marjorie Taylor Greene is upset with him. Ron Paul is upset with him. Trump threatens to sue authors and media who use anonymous sources. But y'all, that's our constitutional right. So that's why I named this What Constitution? Freedom of the press is protected by the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. This amendment guarantees the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the press, assembly, and the right to petition the government. And the same First Amendment guarantees the right to protest. The right to protest, specifically the right to peacefully assemble and petition the government, is protected by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The First Amendment guarantees freedoms concerning religion, expression, assembly, and the right to petition. While this right is broadly protected, it is not absolute and can be subject to certain limitations. At their discretion, they just take away your constitutional rights. And then Trump threatens to sue the freedom of the press. Marjorie Taylor Greene says the base is not happy. Here is why Harvard argues that Trump's funding freeze violates the First Amendment. The president has previously suggested that the university should lose its tax-exempt status. His latest statement came after Harvard sued the administration over its decision to freeze more than $2 billion in funding to the Ivy League school. The administration claimed the university was refusing to follow the administration's demands that it takes actions aimed at ending anti-Semitism on Harvard's campus. But the freedom of the press is protected by the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. This amendment guarantees the right of religion, freedom of speech, the press, assembly, and the right to petition the government. And Harvard is saying that Trump is violating the Constitution. Candace Owens finally speaks out against Trump for this reason. The far-right commentator declares how we cannot allow our rights to be infringed upon. The black community's going crazy, the black Trump supporters. Candace Owens turns on Trump, slams his attempt to suppress speech in Harvard fight.
I never thought that I would see a day where I would be rooting for a university above Donald J. Trump and his administration. But I don't recognize his administration right now. I don't recognize what's happening. I have a theory. I do. We were kicking around some theories earlier, me and the team, and we were going, how could Trump be such a free speech enthusiast and allowing these things to happen, going after college universities, trying to suppress speech, while pretending that you're not suppressing speech, while pretending that you're fighting DEI. It's so messy. It's so obvious. Everyone knows what you're doing. People who are still trying to grift, I suppose, are not willing to challenge you on this, which is ridiculous, because when you are out of office, we are going to have to live with these consequences. Our children are going to have to grow up in this America, okay? So when you threaten our speech, it's not worth it so that we can have pom-poms and go hurrah for a couple of years, then go, okay, well, yeah, now it kind of stinks because, we're getting arrested for wrongthink. We got David Friedman. Yeah, arrest him. Arrest Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. Get them. I love it. And if you think it's going to stop with college campuses, you're out of your mind. So you better buck up and root for Harvard University in this fight.
And MAGA supporters are calling her a traitor. Listen to this other clip. Everybody's coming against her for going against the grain with Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene don't care. I hope Candace don't care. Stand up for what's right.
Candace Owens just did a full 180 on Trump. After years of riding hard for him, she's now calling him out, saying he's not the man we thought he was.
Trump administration is fighting against free speech in America. And that is very sad for me to say and to report as someone who has been a supporter of Donald Trump. We cannot allow our rights to be infringed upon. And if you think it's going to stop with college campuses, you're out of your mind.
Sis claims Trump's recent actions don't line up with the values she once supported. Whew, politics really got no loyalty these days. Let's see how this plays out with election season heating up. That's your Baller Alert.
Trump's executive order to stifle Israel critics probably violates the Constitution. How Trump is blasting through norms and testing limits of his powers. Experts say President Donald Trump's actions have pushed the country into fraught territory. They are divided on whether he has breached constitutional guardrails. I would say so. Trump suggests no laws are broken if he's saving the country. President Trump shared a quotation on social media making it clear it was one he had wanted people to absorb. Quote, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." So he can do whatever he wants in his mind. A loophole that would swallow the Constitution. If Donald Trump can disappear people to El Salvador without due process that he doesn't think he has to defend, then he can do anything. This says U.S. citizenship is a constitutional right. The U.S. Constitution protects the rights of citizens, and deportation is not among those rights. No legal authority for deporting citizens. There is no legal basis or authority for the U.S. government to deport U.S. citizens. But if they terminate the U.S. Constitution, they can deport natural-born citizens of America. And remember, Trump wants El Salvador to build more prisons to jail Americans. And Trump said to Dr. Phil, sometimes revenge can be justified. It caused a little bit of pushback, and then Trump comes out and defends his vow to prosecute rivals, saying sometimes revenge is justifiable. Trump regime creates blacklist of disloyal Americans. So who's he going to send to these prisons? Trump regime creates blacklist of disloyal Americans before illegal war against Iran starts. Tom Hartman.
It would be a scandal, says a New York Times columnist. This is pretty amazing. Acting Under Secretary of State Darren Beattie wants to build a blacklist of people who should be frozen out or even targeted by the administration as enemies. Now, who is Acting Under Secretary of State Darren Beattie? Well, he's the guy who a couple months ago posted on X, "Competent white men must be in charge if you want things to work." And now he is demanding that all staff emails and other records with or about a host of individuals and organizations that track or write about foreign disinformation and all staff communications that merely reference Trump or people in his orbit like Alex Jones, Glenn Greenwald, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. must be turned over to him. In addition, he's requesting a search of communications for keywords including Pepe the Frog, Incel, QAnon, Black Lives Matter, Great Replacement Theory, Far Right, and Infodemic. This is according to the MIT Technology Review. In The Atlantic, Tom Nichols writes, unfortunately, Trump's mania for loyalty above all else almost guarantees that Beattie's disgraceful attempt. Keep in mind, this is the guy who says we need white men in charge for things to work. He is now the Acting Undersecretary of State. Nichols writes, unfortunately, Trump's mania for loyalty above all else also guarantees that Beattie's disgraceful attempt will not be the last such effort at Soviet-style political policing in the United States government.
The age of America is over. Tim Miller and JVL dive into the bleak future of American democracy, global influence, and national identity. Is the age of America truly over? From authoritarian drift to international irrelevance, they explore worst case scenarios and even why the best case scenario might not be enough. And y'all remember this article I did a couple of months ago? U.S. could lose democracy status, says global watchdog group. A just released annual report on the global state of democracy makes for depressing reading, but what's even more depressing is what might appear in next year's edition, or rather, what might not appear in the 2026 volume. An old democracy, by measures the world's oldest, a superpower that has long circled the globe professing to spread freedom. If it continues like this, the United States will not score as a democracy when we release next year's data, said Stefan Lindberg, head of the Varieties of Democracy project run out of Sweden's University of Gothenburg. Epoch Times reported the most iconic status at risk. Global Watchdog warns that the United States could lose democracy status, flags Donald Trump's recent actions as authoritarian. Global democracy is sounding an alarm, and the United States, the oldest worldwide symbol of freedom, might not remain a democracy by next year's edition, reported CBC. The Varieties of Democracy analysis based in Sweden's University of Gothenburg shows a shift that may have the U.S. losing its high-ranking liberal democracy status, with experts warning that the democracy of the country may be on the verge of collapse. What Constitution? March 30th, 2025. Y'all remember this? Trump says he's considering ways to serve as a third term as president. President Donald Trump said Sunday, "I am not joking when trying to serve a third term, the clearest indication he is considering ways to breach a constitutional barrier against continuing to lead the country after his second term ends in the beginning of 2029. There are methods which you could do it," Trump said in a telephone interview with NBC News from Mar-a-Lago. Watch this.
And it's very cool. Oh my gosh. Isn't that great? Just went up yesterday. Wow. Think Joe Biden would do this? I don't think so. And it's very cool. Oh my gosh. Isn't that great? Just went up yesterday. Wow.
And why is Laura Ingraham acting like she's seeing something holy and magnificent? Wow. And why is Trump invoking Biden in this? He said, "You think Biden would do this? What, try to run for a third term that's against the Constitution?" I mean, what is he bragging about? What is he bragging about? Literally. I mean, let's hear this.
Isn't that great? Just went up yesterday. Wow. Think Joe Biden would do this? I don't think so.
And y'all, it is an ad from his store, from the Telegraph. Trump touts third term with Trump 2028 hats on sale in his store for $50. See, it says Trump 2028 hat, $50. And he's got it framed from his store, his 2028 hat. So, do you think he's serious about a third term? Hanging it up in the White House? His plans for lawlessness? March 31st, 2025. Not joking. President Trump outlines a potential road to a third term. Breaking. Trump says he's not joking when asked about seeking a third term. Says a lot of people want me to do it, and there are methods which you could do it. Donald Trump keeps teasing a third term. Here's what to know. I'm doing a page search for Constitution. It says that the 22nd Amendment has already had its say. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. But the Constitution hasn't proved to be a deterrent for Trump before, promoting Republicans in Congress to seek a constitutional amendment to formalize term limits. How Trump could bend the Constitution. There are methods what you could do it, Trump told NBC on March 30th. Politico magazine recently outlined 4 ways Trump could snatch a third term despite the 22nd Amendment, which it summarized as 1. Change the Constitution, 2. Sidestep the Constitution, 3. Ignore the Constitution, or 4. Defy the Constitution. Trump's Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and that's a mean-spirited woman, acknowledged during her confirmation hearing that a third Trump term would require the changing of the Constitution. And Trump ally Representative Andy Ogles, a Republican of Tennessee, introduced a joint resolution to try to kickstart that process on January 23rd. The resolution seeks to amend the Constitution. Are y'all ready? Trump muses about a third term over and over again. The president's suggestion that he would seek to stay in office beyond the constitutional limit come as he's pushed to expand executive authority. Can Trump serve a third term as the U.S. president? Why is Trump talking about a third term? Trump was asked in an interview by NBC about the possibility of seeking a third term and said, there are methods you can do it. I'm not joking. A lot of people want me to, but I basically tell them we have a long way to go. It's very early in this administration. Report confirms a constitutional path for President Trump's third term. They'll make the illegal legal. House Representative proposes amendment to allow Trump a third term. Trump says he's not joking about the third term in defiance of the Constitution. Trump voters are reacting to the rumors that Trump wants to run in 2028. Let's go see this. Trump's 19 Trump voters are reacting to rumors that Trump wants to run in 2028. This was May 2nd, 3 days ago. Well, 3 days ago, y'all, now this is an important point, okay? Well, up until May 2nd, Trump kept saying, I'm going to run for a third term. Well, President Donald Trump has been hinting about potentially running for a third presidential term in 2028, even though it goes against the 22nd Amendment. When asked about what methods he would use to run again during the recent interview with Time, Trump said, there are some loopholes that have been discussed that are well known, but I don't believe in loopholes. I don't believe in using loopholes. Even though he hasn't clearly stated that he plans on running for a third term, he has begun selling Trump 2028 MAGA-like hats on the Trump Organization's official website. His son Eric was even seen wearing one of the hats. Naturally, this has sparked a lot of conversations across the internet. So when Reddit user Toxaholic asks, MAGA, do you support Trump running a third term? A lot of people did not hold back their responses. And here's what they said below. Person number 1. No, I'm not for anyone staying in office for more than 8 years. I'd also like term limits on Congress. We need age limits for the judiciary and Congress. Number 2, stop normalizing this talk. It would be illegal third term. Always put the word illegal in front of it. Number 3, anyone who supports it, regardless of party affiliation, cannot simultaneously claim to support the U.S. Constitution, including the sacred Second Amendment. No, unequivocally no, and I am vocal about this in every Trump-friendly public forum. Presidents should serve a minimum of 2 terms and not attempt to subvert the Constitution. No, person number 5. No, and I voted for him, but term limits need to stay in place. In fact, all politicians should have term limits. It goes on and on. Number 8 says any state secretary of state who allows him on the ballot is violating the Constitution and should be personally prosecuted regardless of the outcome. I am an ex-MAGA, and absolutely not. Even if I were still MAGA, absolutely not. It's unacceptable for him to change the terms of the presidency to be able to stay in office. I'm a Republican living in a deep red state, and I've never actually met anyone who's in favor for this. Number 15 says, I think the question is, would you vote for Trump or anyone if they broke the law and ignored the Constitution in order to run for a 3rd term or found some legal and immoral way to run for a 3rd term? Like, would MAGA support the violation of the law to vote for Trump? My parents are hardcore MAGA, and they said they would not be okay with him or anyone else doing a 3rd term. As a conservative, I take the Constitution seriously. So no, a 3rd term is not and should not be possible for him. So most of these people are constitutionalists that want to uphold the Constitution. Marjorie Taylor Greene is coming against him because she wants to uphold the Constitution. Ron Paul is coming against it because he wants to uphold the Constitution. Candace Owens is coming against it because she wants to uphold the Constitution and says if you don't stand up for the Constitution, there will be no rights in the future. No, what Constitution? Trump says he won't. Now, this is after all that, on May 2nd, people saying, no, we wouldn't, no, we wouldn't, no, we wouldn't, and Trump getting major pushback. This is from yesterday, May 4th. Trump says he won't seek a 3rd term. Now, is he backing away to not be so controversial, to come in a back door? Because we've seen for months and months and months, he says he's not leaving office, he's going to stay in there a 3rd term. And then there was all that pushback, and now out of the blue, on the 2nd, he said, on the 2nd, people were saying, no, we're not going to tolerate this. Then on the 4th, he says, okay, I'm not going to run a 3rd term. Since when do you think Trump just gives up so easily? Do you think he's plotting or is he strategizing? U.S. President Donald Trump has denied that he is considering a 3rd presidential term. He's denied it now, y'all. And we saw all the articles where he said there are ways to do it. Could we see a constitutional amendment to allow him to stay in office, or could we see him defy the Constitution, sidestep the Constitution for a 3rd term? Trump 2028 3rd term project explores constitutional amendment to allow Trump a 3rd term. Now, y'all, this is the one that got me. This was March 31st, 2025. Could Trump run as vice president, let's say with J.D. Vance, in 2028, and then bypass the U.S. Constitution and then become the president for a 3rd time? Never say never. His entire team was talking about exploring ways to get Trump into a 3rd term. Which reminded me of this. And I've loved politics my whole entire life. My daddy loved politics. We watched politics on the 3 channels on TV. That's all my daddy did was watch politics. And I remember Watergate like yesterday. So on the left is Spiro Agnew on the left picture on the left, the taller guy. And then Richard Nixon is the shorter guy who was the president. Spiro Agnew was the vice president to Richard Nixon. And he resigned in 1973 because he was being investigated by the FBI and by the feds, and charges were pending on him related to robbery, extortion, tax evasion. He pleaded no contest to the single felony charge of tax evasion. And when he resigned, to the right, President Richard Nixon selected Gerald Ford to be the new vice president. Gerald Ford was in the House of Representatives for 25 years from Michigan, but he was never a member of the Senate. He was just in the Congress when he was appointed to the vice presidency. And then what happened the next year? So these two right here, these two were the president and the vice president. The vice president resigned because of investigations, and so he was out of the picture. So then we had the president select a new vice president, Gerald Ford. But then Richard Nixon was getting investigated for Watergate, so he had to resign. So then that made Gerald Ford the President of the United States. Gerald Ford was not elected to be the U.S. President. He became the president after Richard Nixon resigned in 1974. Ford had previously been selected as the vice president, serving in a role before assuming the presidency. He is the only person to become president of the United States without having ever been elected as the president or the vice president. Never say never. Who knows what we're about to see? And then we just had Trump yesterday. President Trump sparks outrage with AI image of himself as Pope. A week ago, he was at the Pope's funeral, and now he's releasing an AI-generated image of him being the new Pope. Vance defends Trump's post depicting AI-generated image of himself as the Pope. Reuters and Politico reported Trump jokes he would like to be the next Pope. And then yesterday he releases a picture of himself as the Pope. 5 days ago, Trump, I'd like to be the Pope. So that was 4 days after the Pope was buried. Trump was joking about being the next Pope. And then a few days later, he posted an AI image of himself as the Pope. President Donald Trump appears to have his eye on a new gig after being back in the Oval Office for just over 100 days. April 28th, Trump said, "I run the country and the world." This was 2 days after the Pope's burial. And Trump says, "I run the country and the world." President Trump shared his thoughts on how his 2 terms as president has differed, saying in a new interview to The Atlantic that this time around he's leading the country and the world. "The first time I had things to do, run the country and survive. I had all these crooked guys," Trump said in the interview published Monday. "And the second time, I run the country and the world." And yesterday, Trump says, "I don't know," when asked if he's required to uphold the Constitution. America is over. The globalist agenda is here, and it is dismantling everything that we knew, every freedoms that we've had, every protections that we've had. It's all about to go away. When they're talking about throwing free speech people in jail and fining them and sending them to foreign countries and taking away citizens' rights. Y'all, we're seeing the Bible come to life. We're seeing the beast system being constructed, and the people that don't want to go along with the beast system will be killed. And the day of the Lord will not come until the Antichrist is revealed, the lawless one. And I think we're about to see the revelation and the revealing of the lawless one. Y'all keep serving Jesus and do not compromise. I love y'all. Thank you for watching. Hey, if you would prayerfully consider a small love offering, that would be great. We are a viewer-supported only channel, and there are needs going on in our life right now that any donation amount would be a blessing. Thank y'all for watching. I love y'all. Bye-bye.